Marvin Harrison Jr. is the ultimate buy low player. We'll tell you why on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. On today's show, we are continuing with our division by division recaps, looking at the NFC West. And Kate, let's talk about some buy low candidates. And I want to start with Marvin Harrison Jr. Why is now the right time to buy low on Marvin Harrison?
It's the ultimate post-hype sleeper. And I say that kind of loosely because Marvin Harrison Jr., I don't think anybody's ready to push him off a cliff necessarily. But by all standards, his rookie season was disappointing. Now, had some shining moments. When you look at the final stat line, 62 receptions, 885 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns, that's not too bad, right? And he set, expectations sky high, had a monster week 2 performance that I think set the bar maybe unreasonably high for what we got out of Marvin Harrison Jr. But all things considered, I think we need to go back to the source. We need to go back to the fact that he saw some elite opportunity. He ranked 5th among wide receivers in unrealized air yards, 7th in deep targets, 64th percentile among wide receivers, ranked 64th overall in terms of his catchable target rate. The usage for Marvin Harrison Jr. was not, I think, necessarily entirely fitting for the diverse skill set that he has. He's a 6'4" wide receiver that moves like he's much smaller. I just don't think that this was a rookie season to remember because we didn't get to see enough of that like middle of the field usage. I don't think, we kind of saw him take a bunch of deep shots, but the opportunity was there. He's tied to a good quarterback. And finally, I believe in the talent of Marvin Harrison Jr.
And sometimes it's as simple as that. Like, hey, I just think he's super talented. And I think he's being drafted too low. He's going at 15th overall, wide receiver 11. And you look at some of the players ahead of him, like, all right, so I love Drake London. You know how much of a fan I am of Drake London. Marvin Harrison Jr. is just a better player than Drake London. I know it didn't necessarily show that in year one, but Drake London didn't look like the way that Drake London looks now in year one either. And I just think it's going to take a little bit of time. And I'm just not concerned about him at all. I think he's one of the safest prospects we've had in a long time. I think in year 2 with the new quarterback or with Kyler Murray, he's going to be able to figure things out. And if I don't have to pay top end prices to get him, I would do that in a heartbeat. Let me give you some guys that I would trade straight up for him. A.J. Brown, who had another phenomenal season. A.J. Brown, 27 years old, wide receiver 9, awesome player. Give me Marvin Harrison Jr., who's 5 years younger. And I think, frankly, Kate, is just going to outproduce him this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And when you're looking at maybe some of the other like speculative players, right, around that range, you mentioned a Drake London and AJ Brown. We know the ceiling for those players can be pretty high, but when you pair it with the fact that, Marvin Harrison Jr., 22 years old, 22 years old, he is, in just the second year of his NFL or heading into the second year of his NFL career. You take all of these traits that maybe you had to, wait and be patient on. They're still there. The traits that made Marvin Harrison Jr., the hands, the skill set as a route runner, despite his size, his athleticism, especially at his size, his explosive playmaking ability, like contested catch situations, you name it, all of that adds up to pretty significant upside. And I think that, what makes it feel not great is the fact that you probably bought into him. If you were in a dynasty startup last year, probably took him as the third, fourth wide receiver off the board, right? And that doesn't feel great, but don't let, that investment, that shock of the rookie season detract you from the fact that, like, I think that, that week 2 game, 130 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. I think that he could have plenty more of those down the stretch. And we're going to look back and feel probably pretty silly that we gave up on that player evaluation as quickly as a lot of people did.
One other player that's currently being drafted ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr., and we like this guy a lot, Devon Achane, one of our favorite running backs in Dynasty, but like, am I trading a 188-pound running back that consistently gets banged up for Marvin Harrison Jr.? You bet I am, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I don't even have to think twice. Now, in terms of draft capital, okay, let's say you don't have the ability to flip A.J. Brown or Achane or Marvin Harrison Jr. In terms of picks, what would you be comfortable giving
up? Easily a first and let's say another top 15 wide receiver.
So we actually have a couple trades that I wanted to go through. Holy cow, this is depressing, but also great at the same time. Marvin Harrison Jr. for a Marvin Harrison Jr., Josh Palmer, and a 2025 second-round pick for a 2025 first-round pick and a 2025 second-round pick.
Stop.
Breece Hall for Marvin Harrison Jr. straight up.
Give me Marvin Harrison Jr. so easily.
Marvin Harrison Jr. for Christian McCaffrey straight up.
Marvin Harrison Jr., what are we doing, people?
Marvin Harrison Jr. and a fourth-round pick for Josh Jacobs and Brandon Ayuk straight up.
Stop. Give me Marvin Harrison Jr. every single day of the week, not even thinking twice.
One more. Marvin Harrison Jr., a 2025 first-round pick in Dalton Kincaid for, I'm assuming this is a super flex league, Brock Bowers, Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, and Christian McCaffrey. Cousins and Rodgers are just, I don't even care about those guys. So basically, Christian McCaffrey and Brock Bowers for Marvin Harrison Jr., Dalton Kincaid, and a 2025 first-round pick.
So easy. Marvin Harrison Jr. every day of the week.
So this is our point. Like, go out and make offers for Marvin Harrison Jr. because even
with tires.
But even with him being ranked at 16th overall, we're seeing trades in real leagues where he's going for far less than that. I think now is the right opportunity to jump in on Marvin Harrison Jr. if you haven't done so already. All right, okay, let's talk about some sells from the NFC West, including a couple running backs. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We absolutely love FanDuel. But when the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. And there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or just want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team, the Lakers, or for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is super easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That is FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets, and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Okay, let's talk about some players that we are selling from this division. Who do you got?
I'm going to roll with Kyren Williams, who I know, probably it's hard to move. It's hard to move on from Kyren Williams when you look at the situation, when you look at the fact that, we had all these fears about Blake Corum coming in as a rookie and taking work from Kyren Williams. That wasn't the case. I mean, Kyren Williams, even before Blake Corum was injured, was the bona fide workhorse. There was absolutely zero question. Forget the fact that he was listed as a returner on the depth chart this year. Like,
remember how much everybody freaked out when that was the case?
It was a catastrophic meltdown for a lot of the dynasty community, a lot of the fantasy community, pushed him down draft boards a little bit. And I mean, like, when you think about it, there were more games this year where he had 18 plus rush attempts than there were with 16 or fewer. Like, scored touchdowns at an astronomical rate. Once again, 3 different games with 2+ rushing touchdowns. It was wild. But I'm still looking at Kyren Williams. I'm looking at the fact that, saw some regression in the efficiency department in terms of rushing success rate, yards per attempt, even in terms of like those fumbling concerns. Saw an increase in fumbles, and that was already an issue for Kyren Williams. Yes, the yards from scrimmage went up this year, but I still think like 5 fumbles in the 2024 season, that is kind of like the one, the holy grail of mistakes that a running back can make. And I do think that Sean McVay really liked Blake Corum a lot coming out of Michigan. They invested that draft capital. I have to imagine that this feels like a good time to just kind of dip and maybe take a small hit on Kyren Williams' overall dynasty value. He's still being valued RB8, 33rd overall in the latest batch of Dynasty ADP. I know he's 24 years old, but I think that this Rams offense is going to be going through some changes. Maybe they move on from Matthew Stafford. Maybe that, just kind of signals the future of the running back position as well. And I don't necessarily know that as much as we love Kyren Williams, he's going to maintain that top 10 dynasty value moving forward.
And one of the things that I always look at is, can this player see his dynasty value significantly increase? And with Kyren Williams, I think the answer is no. Like, I think there's a good chance that he could, just depending on where we land, like end up as RB7, maybe even RB6. But with the influx of running backs coming in here in April, I don't see that really being the case. And I think he's somebody that's more than likely to go to see his value drop, because let's say he has a good year, but not a great year, and now he's hitting free agency. Well, now we're talking about him now down to RB10, RB11, maybe even further. And generally, I just want to move off of guys that I just don't think have the upside to move way up their rankings compared to where they're being drafted. And if I can flip a Kyren Williams for another running back, let's go through some of the running backs we like. Like, to me, James Cook is somebody that I really like. And James Cook is being drafted almost 12 spots behind, actually 13 spots behind Kyren Williams. I would just rather do that because you're getting significantly cheaper. You probably can get something with that trade. I also think James Cook just has more upside.
Yeah, I think that that's a really great example of a player you might be able to flip one for one. I just think, generally speaking, like, I'm not trying to take anything away from Kyren Williams, but when you look at like player for player, James Cook, the more physically gifted NFL player, both of them can be incredibly productive. James Cook answered the questions about touchdowns that we had this year. He's, playing with an excellent quarterback. Kyren Williams has far more questions than we see for James Cook, or even, scrolling down the list, a guy like David Montgomery, who I think has probably a pretty similar, ceiling, but still has just as high a floor, if not probably higher. No. 27 years old. He's not that much older than Kyren Williams. And, you consider the fact that, Kyren Williams has been a player that's taken on significant touches and significant workload in his time in the NFL. Like, I don't think flipping for David Montgomery plus is a terrible idea at this point.
My guy is Kenneth Walker, who I really love the talent. But going into the final year of his rookie contract, the Seahawks have already spent a second-round pick on his backup, Zach Charbonnet. Now, just to be clear, I think Walker is a much, much better player than Charbonnet is. But Walker has not been the most durable running back, and I do wonder what that could potentially look like in the upcoming year. He's quite a bit more affordable than Kyren Williams. Kyren's being drafted 31st overall, while Kenneth Walker is RB50. So again, it's not the same, but he's just a player that I have similar concerns about. Like, I don't see his value going up. I don't see him becoming a guy that's going to catch 50, 60 passes in the receiving game. And if his workload is going to be cut in half, or if they're going to start giving Charbonnet more touches, I probably would rather move on a year too early rather than a year too late.
I think that's just a good philosophy when it comes to the running back position. We've talked about, Kenneth Walker before and the fact that, we're seeing some changes. They moved on from OC Brian Grubb in his first season. It still kind of feels like TBD on where Zach Charbonnet fits into this overall scheme. But I do think you're right that when you're looking at the landscape, okay, Kenneth Walker, RB13, how much room does he have to grow? Maybe he jumps like a couple of rounds, which is, you'd love that every day. But what are the chances that he also just, maintains that value, or they move on from him this offseason? Perhaps he's moved on in a trade, knowing that he's going to be approaching free agency here soon and going to be seeking his second contract. Like, there's a wide range of outcomes and a wide range of variables that I think can, put Kenneth Walker's overall value at risk for, just not making those gains that you generally want to see at the running back position.
I do want to see what happens with the Seahawks offense this offseason, because I do think there's a chance maybe they move on from DK Metcalf and they become a little bit more run-centric under Mike McDonald. We'll see. But Walker's somebody that I struggle with, because last year there were games when he was healthy. He looked awesome. But if you're already getting banged up at this age, he's a smaller running back, 5'9", 210 pounds. I have concerns about what it's going to look like over the next couple of years. He is somebody who has dealt with injuries over his entire rookie contract so far. Again, I think I would just rather get out a year early. And if he has an awesome year, great. But my concern is that it's going to be more of the same, and you're going to see him drop from RB13 down to RB19, and you're going to lose all the value.
Yeah, and I think the upside here for Kenneth Walker, like on a week-to-week basis, pretty high. But I mean, when you pair the injury concerns with the upcoming contract situation and put that all together, it doesn't feel likely that he's going to see a tremendous gain in value. So again, our general policy for these running backs: get out a year too early as opposed to a year too late. Sometimes you do end up missing on that peak in value, but when we're talking about running backs that are already being drafted relatively high, it feels sometimes easier to make that swing and feel content if you do happen to miss.
All right, Kate, let's talk about some of our favorite sleepers from the AFC, or sorry, from the NFC West. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Football season may be over, but basketball is in full swing, and there is no better way to stay in the game than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you just pick more or less than at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. This week, I'm looking at Jason Tatum for more than 29 points. The best part? PrizePicks is quick and easy, and you can set your lineup in less than 60 seconds, and they're fast and secure withdrawals, meaning that I get my winnings in as little as 15 minutes. Plus, I love all of their weekly promos. Go check them out on the site. Download the app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day. One in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Kay, let's talk about some sleepers from the NFC West. Who do you got?
I'm going all in on Jordan Whittington, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams. 6th-round pick out of the 2024 receiving class. And obviously that class was a highly touted one. But Jordan Whittington, coming out of Texas, didn't have a ton of production to his name. He fell through the radar a little bit. But when we saw him in Sean McVay's offense, I really liked what I saw, Marcus. Yeah. As a rookie, didn't have a full-time role, did get some work, especially while, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua were dealing with some injuries, and generally quiet. But when he had the opportunity, had a couple of really solid games. Week 5, 7 catches on 10 targets, 89 receiving yards. Didn't have any receiving touchdowns this year, but when I watch the tape and when I look at the advanced metrics, things are telling me I kind of like what I'm seeing here from Jordan Whittington. Had a lot of yards after the catch ability, which I think we thought was a skill set he would possess. Was used pretty close to the line of scrimmage as a rookie. So hoping to see, some of that route tree diverge. But first and foremost, like the opportunity is going to be there. The team is shopping Cooper Kupp. We're not expecting him back.
No.
They're going to need a wide receiver to work, the middle of the field areas. I think he could fill that Cooper Kupp role pretty well. Looking at his advanced metrics, 89th percentile PFF receiving grade in year 1, 78th percentile in separation percentage, 95th percentile yards per route run, 98th percentile yards after the catch per reception, which again, I'll mention kind of skewed a little bit because of the fact that he was utilized so close to the line of scrimmage, but he's got great hands, 10-inch hands. He's physical. I think he fits exactly the type of, receiver that Sean McVay really likes in his offense. He's just a really tough dude. And I think that the opportunity is going to be there for him to take a massive jump in value this year.
It's always a good idea to buy Sean McVay receivers because they get peppered with targets. I'm not of the camp that I don't think Matt Stafford leaves. I think this is just a lot of social media nonsense. Because Cooper Kupp is getting traded, that's because Cooper Kupp isn't performing to his contract. I think Stafford stays, and I think they just continue to build around him. So I think Jordan Whittington, who played in a lot of big moments for this team, made a bunch of big plays in some of these playoff games, is somebody that I am looking for as well. My guy, Kate, is Trey Benson, who didn't do a ton during his rookie season. He's being drafted at RB28. And generally, my dynasty strategy is load up with wide receivers, tight ends early, and then come back and try to get 3, 4, 5 of these running backs being drafted between RB20 and RB35 and hope that one of them hits. And usually they do. Like we saw last year, Chase Brown was one of those guys that hit. James Cook was a little bit lower, but he was in that range as well. Bucky Irving in that range. Tyrone Tracy was being drafted outside the top 35 running backs. So this consistently happens. And I think Trey Benson going into year 2, further removed from the gnarly knee injury that he had when he was in college, I just think this is going to be his time to shine in this offense. He is an outstanding athlete, and we saw that at the NFL Combine last year. And oh, by the way, James Conner is 29 years old, going to be 30 this year. I just don't know how much he has left. I want to take chances on super talented, athletic running backs going into their second year on offenses that I think are just improving.
Yeah, and I think you're looking at, a situation where you are kind of getting in at this ground level because there was a lot of disappointment. There was a lot of conjecture that, okay, James Conner, he's 29 years old. There's no way he's going to post as efficient a season as he did. And then guess what? He was rewarded with a 2-year, $19 million contract extension that is going to keep him with the team through 2026. But again, we're looking at a player that has not historically been healthy throughout his career, has, generally been, not available for the majority of, or for, the full trajectory of the NFL seasons. I think we saw a lot of efficiency out of the Arizona Cardinals run game. So I think there's something there. And I want, whoever's going to be starting at running back, I think Trey Benson, like you mentioned, just has this kind of elite composition between his size, speed, athleticism. I think, where he can, continue to make headway is just seeing the football field, gaining more experience, gaining more vision. But all in all, 4.6 yards per attempt as a rookie, had really limited opportunities. I still think that there's a lot of upside here for Trey Benson or whoever the lead back for the Cardinals is. And I just don't think James Conner's going to get healthier the more he ages.
And there just aren't very many running backs that are 22 years old or younger that are being drafted outside the top 100 picks, right? It's Trey Benson. It's Jonathan Brooks, who we know is going to miss the entire 2025 season. It's Braylon Allen, who we said is a buy on the last couple of podcasts. I mean, and that's just about it. So you're taking a shot on somebody that's incredibly young, incredibly athletic. And maybe it doesn't happen this year, but if you're paying RB29, RB28 prices, you don't necessarily need him to be an every week starter. What you would hopefully like to see is somebody that's becoming a bigger factor in the offense. And then maybe by 2026, this is just his backfield. And all of a sudden you got a starting running back on hopefully a top 12 offense in the league. It also doesn't cost a lot to get him right now, Kate. Like if you were trading a draft pick, knowing how good this running back class is coming up, I'm assuming a third round pick, it would probably get it done.
Yeah, I think that kind of seems pretty
Because
fair.
I don't think you're giving up a second, right? Because there's so many good running backs in this class. But a third round pick to take a swing on a running back like this, I think is worthwhile.
Yeah, I think very fair. And, Trey Benson, his time at FSU, an elite player at like forcing missed tackles. And that's something that I think we can definitely hang our hat on here in this upcoming season as he gets healthier. I love Trey Benson, the player, and I love the potential for opportunity here. And I think generally speaking, as I might have gone a little too headfirst into Trey Benson this offseason.
So did I. Yeah.
But the perfect post-hype sleeper.
Absolutely. So go trade for Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey Benson for the Cardinals right now while their value is at an all-time low. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Kate on Twitter, at Kate Majuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosier. Enjoy your Valentine's Day, and we'll see you right back here on Monday.